Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to Curious Kingdom. Today we are recapping supernatural thriller film The Invisible. Nick Powell, a senior in high school who succeeds academically and is passionate about creative writing, decides to forego graduation and enroll in a writing program in London in spite of his controlling mother Diane's excessive expectations from him. A few years ago, Nick's father passed away suddenly, and the two had kept their tumultuous relationship a secret. The movie opens with what appears to be a great celebration. After Nick's father passed away, Diane stands up and admits that it was difficult. Then she continues, saying that having a teenager like Nick was gratifying since he has developed into a wonderful man, and that she is confident that the future holds great success for both of them. Then Diane raises a glass in honor of her teenage son Nick. Then she presents him with a gift that has his name inscribed on it. "Nick, make me proud," Mom claims. Nick then makes his way to the dining room table and begins to cut the cake. Then he went to garage sitting next to workbench. There he suddenly pulled a shotgun and pointed the gun towards his face. Suddenly Nick wakes up in his bed. Everything happened in his dream. Diane has arranged 2 eggs and bacon on a tray in the shape of a smiley face. She is reading the newspaper when Nick asks if she has considered the writing program in London. His mother just tells her that she doesn't need to think about it because Nick already knows how she feels about it. Nick cycles to school after breakfast. Nick offers Pete Egan, another student, a French essay at school. Nick asks Pete if he wants to know what is written in the essay, but Pete just says that he doesn't need to speak French right now. A girl approaches him and asks if he is going to a nighttime party, but he simply replies that he is busy and has some things to do. Pete Egan gets accosted in the restroom by a gang of adolescents led by Annie, who accuse him of accepting things without paying for it. The bully scares him with a knife and threatens to cut off his finger if he doesn't pay them. Soon, she leaves the bathroom as her entourage follows. Then we are shown a class scene in which a boy is reading his poem. After he finishes, the teacher requests that Nick speak his poetry. The entire class appears to be absorbed in Nick's recitation, which is interrupted by the ringing of the bell. Nick approaches Annie's group and pays for the items taken by his pal. He approaches her table and inquires about the amount his friend owes them. He keeps throwing money on the table and asks Annie whether it's enough. She answers by telling him to go away. He bends down and whispers in her ear as he prepares to go. She becomes enraged and confronts him in the cafeteria as he walks away from the table. They are both taken to the principal's office. When the principal asks them to explain what happened, Nick says jokingly that she finds him handsome. The principal instructs Annie to go home and then warns Nick not to waste his time on individuals like Annie. Annie returns to her flat, where she scolds her mother for failing to feed her brother Victor. As her father watches, she threatens her mother to get off the couch. Her mother begs her father to say something to their daughter, but he agrees with Annie, resulting in a conflict between the couple. Annie enters her room and puts on her headphones after ensuring that her younger brother is fed. The following evening, Nick meets up with Pete. Pete gives him some cash and inquires about some translations his schoolmates requested. Then he asks Nick if he's going to Eva's party, to which Nick replies that he's not. After that, he gives Pete a book that contains a secret plane ticket that will transport him to London so he can take part in the writing program. He believes that since his father passed away when he was 13 years old, his mother has planned out his entire life, which he finds to be oppressive. Marcus Behe, Andy's boyfriend, goes out with her while breaking into a car in the meantime. She enters a store with a jewelry display, breaks the window, and takes a pretty necklace. As the police look for them, they drive away in the stolen vehicle. She fights with Marcus in the morning and then departs. Despite Marcus's request to leave the bag with the stolen jewelry, it appears that she does not trust him. He becomes enraged by this and reports her theft to the authorities. The classroom. Pete is keeping an eye on Annie at her locker at school. The stolen jewelry is discovered when the police arrive after breaking into her locker. When she is arrested, Annie calls her partner to let him know. She claims to know who did it and that she would take care of it while he pretends to be innocent. Talking about Nick's future vacation, Pete and Nick are riding their bicycles back to their house. Pete claims he wants to move to London as well and become a cricket superstar there. Nick, however, sarcastically points out that he does not have a passport or the means to pay for the ticket. He then bids Pete farewell. Nick returns home, and his mother tells him that his flight has been rescheduled. Nick believes he can explain the matter to his mother, who expresses disappointment in his behavior and claims that she feels as though a stranger is residing in the home with her. Later that evening, under pressure, Pete is attacked by Annie and her gang. He draws the group's focus to Nick, telling he ratted her out thinking he is out of town and she won't be able to do anything to Nick. Meanwhile, Nick is present at the party that the entire school was talking about. When Nick runs into a female there, he offers to take her to London on the ensuing 2-hour trip. She finds a new watch in his pocket as they begin kissing and pulls it out to ask him why he is wearing an old watch. He explains to her that his father gave it to him. He leaves the house and goes for a walk, but an old, beat-up car soon appears behind him. It turned out to be Annie and her thugs. They begin to beat Nick. Pete keeps pleading with them to stop as he watches from the car. When Annie approaches Nick, he answers, "You are," to her question about who is the broken one now. Annie becomes enraged by this and kicks him into head. Nick landed on a rock, smashing his head. The group finds that he is not breathing when they checked him. The group is terrified, as one of them says he does not want to go to jail for this. Suddenly regaining her composure, Annie says they must pick him up. They transport him into the woods after doing this. His watch drops to the ground as a result. They dumped his body into a storm drain, covered it up and left. Later, Annie is seen violently knocking outside Marcus's house. She tells him that she killed him and that she is in need of an alibi immediately. Marcus refuses and justifies it by citing his probation status, further adding that he warned her that she is getting out of control and she shouldn't have come to his house. While dragging her wounded palm over his house and stolen cars, she blackmailed him. She then burns her clothing in a fire alongside River, destroying evidence. Vic makes a clean exit from the bushes and onto the road the following morning. He heads directly to his school. Pretty odd. He understands that nobody is able to see or hear him. Even when he throws the book at the shelf in an attempt to stir up some trouble, the class remains silent. He's in the head teacher's office. He tries to speak to her mother when he overhears her on the phone, but his voice doesn't seem to get through. He is struck by a car and then a truck as he flees out of the school, but he survives both incidents unharmed. It turns out that the authorities are looking into his status as a missing person. Nick tries to inform his mother that he is dead, but no one was able to hear him. Nick started wandering across town, eventually getting fed up. Brian Larson and Kate Toney, two detectives investigating the case. The detectives see a broken piece of the automobile on the ground and spot tire tracks close to some trees. When the police learn about the confrontation between Annie and Nick, they visit her house to look into it more. They locate her on the roof, where they question her about Nick's whereabouts. She replies that she doesn't know, and the police advise her to call them if she has any information. During this time, a search team has been organized to look for Nick in the woods. Nick visits his house where his mother was going through his belongings. A bird that is injured and on the verge of death is perched on the porch railing, while Nick's mother reads his poetry journal in his room. Nick takes hold of a live bird that he sees on his shoulder. When the bird in his grasp disappears and the bird on the fence slowly expires, Nick realizes he must still be alive, and there is still time for him to be saved. He tries to take charge of the search group by commanding the search dogs. He also begs Annie for assistance, but she is unable to hear him. Pete is on the verge of revealing the truth while the search goes on but remains silent. Seeing all this, Nick gets disappointed and frustrated. Annie is entering her own house through the window, where she tells Victor, her younger brothers, that she might be gone for time. She offers him the necklace given to her by their mother, but Victor refuses and tells that she should have it. She also have a confrontation with her father, who tells her that they don't want any part of mess she has created. Detective Larson stops by to see Marcus Garr. He asks him about the heist at the jewelry store, and he replies that he wasn't there but confirms Annie's alibi for the night when Nick went missing. Pete is stopped by Marcus outdoors and told that the police are after him. They go back to where Nick was last seen in the woods. Annie's gang is gathered by Marcus, who warns Annie that she will be asked to confess. She calls Pete and asks him to come along to see Marcus. There, Marcus points a gun to Annie and threatens her. Then he tells Pete to return home. Then Annie commands Marcus to shoot her if he wants to. One of the thugs shouts, "Cop," and Annie grabs the distraction to grab Marcus's gun. The police order her to halt as she aims the gun at them and begins to flee, but she is able to outsmart them. She answers never when Nick yells that they will capture her. Nick was overjoyed to think she can hear him and there's hope left for him. Annie spent the night at the school gym taking shower and resting on a gym mattress. Nick observed her and realized that she was hurt for everything that transpired. Annie makes her way to Nick's house. She observes him living in his own room and looks over his possessions. She pours ashes from a tiny container onto her palm as Nick's mother walks into the room. When Annie rushes to where she last saw Nick in the woods, she discovers that he is no longer there. A nicotine gum pack Annie found directed her to Pete's new location. Pete admits that neither he nor Nick reported Annie, and it was Marcus who shifted the body, and he must be responsible for ratting her out. She finds Marcus, takes him hostage at the gunpoint, and brings him to a ledge. There they both shoot each other. Following their shooting encounter, Annie calls Detective Larson and informs him of Nick's whereabouts. Meanwhile, at Pete's residence, he attempts suicide. Nick finds Pete's spirit next to him as he passes away. Just when Pete is ready to pass away, his father shows up and saves him. Police and medical team reaches the dam and Nick is saved from the river and taken to the hospital. Annie reaches out to him despite the bullet wound to her abdomen. Nick guides her towards him along the halls, where he makes contact with his mother through Annie. Initially reluctant, but later she believed Nick was there and allowed Annie to visit him in hospital room. She talks to him in the hospital room and lies next to him as Nick's spirit returns to his own body. She gives him her mother's necklace, which was very precious to her. He tells her that she saved him and that was her good deed. At that point, she faints and passes away. Sometime later, a young child flies a remote-controlled plane over a lake. Nick keeps an eye on the child and worries about his security. He admits that his sister was supposed to accompany him, but she passed away. They ought to convey a message to her. Nick makes a suggestion. They wrote "Hello, Annie" before sending the plane to fly. The Invisible leaves viewers reflecting on the fragility of life and the significance of our actions. It serves as a reminder that our choices can have far-reaching. Curious Knight signing off. Stay safe, stay curious.